They came out from Egypt, but Egypt was still inside of them. So you need to understand that the human soul has compartments. And until you get deprogrammed of the old programming and then reprogrammed with the new programming, you will keep feeling like this. It doesn't matter what you have. It does not matter what you own. In fact, in that state, those things own you. And you need to do something about that. People will still speak in tongues and they're still suffering from low self-esteem. Great ministers, people, great public speakers will still be public speakers and then they're still feeling small about themselves until something is done about this. Somebody can own fleets of cars, is so wealthy, but is still struggling with low self-esteem. And doesn't matter what he accomplishes, he does not think he has done anything. Why? It's the thinking process. It's the thinking process. If I remember very well, it is Shakespeare that says, it is not good or bad, but your thinking has made it so. Even though I have my reservations about those things. You know, somebody saying it's not good, it's not bad. We need to know what is bad, what has God's word said about this. Alright, so sit down. This is where we stopped in the last time. Sit down and write down. Take out a little bit of time. What early experiences did you have that might have contributed to the way you view and feel about yourself? If you're feeling small, if you have low self-esteem, if your thinking about you is that you are not good enough, that everything you do, nothing can ever work well, can you sit down and allow the Spirit of God to help you? Take your mind back and write those things down, and they can be helped. You can be helped out of these things. Now, negative core beliefs is what I want to talk about. When these experiences would have happened over a long time and you believe them to be true, that now forms what is called negative core belief. If you believe all those things, the bad things people said about you, the names they call you, you never lied, the looking down on you, maligning you, and all the terrible experiences you've had, names that you were called that made you feel less than human beings. In fact, right before your eyes, you saw dogs treated better than yourself. Food that couldn't be given to human beings were kept for you, and that kept working on your self-esteem. Now we need to deal with this thing called core beliefs. When the core beliefs you have about yourself is positive, it affects the way you see yourself and the kind of risk you will want to take. You wouldn't want to take any major step to do anything. I watched one of these young men on, I think it was British Got Talent, and from the beginning he was vibrating. 34-year-old young man, and they had to do a lot of working on him, encouraging him, and then he came with, I think that was his nanny, and an old woman whom he believes is the only person that believes in him. And truly, she kept telling him, even though he was still scared and shivering, but by the time he broke through, highly talented. See how you see yourself affects even your performance. You need to be able to make those changes. That's why it's not just taking a decision. It's not just saying, I determine from today I'm going to change. No, you need to replace those thoughts that you had about yourself. Somebody's got to help you replace them. That's why this teaching I'm giving is so important to me. As part of my celebration of my birthday, is so important to me. And if this is the only one you have, you need to get to my website, the one linked to this video, and get the rest of them. Because you cannot just stop a bad habit. And low self-esteem doesn't affect you until it has become a habit. Your thinking pattern has a habit that always goes back to there. That has become a default. That's, you think about it without making an effort. But you need to now get reprogrammed. You need to get reprogrammed. You need to say the things that God says about you, about yourself, until from within the door of change opens. And when that happens, you have changed. 21 days is just the beginning. And if you're able to keep saying the right thing to replace the wrong thoughts that keep coming, and say it with a lot of enthusiasm, say it and mean it. Say it with a lot of emotion, because what caused it was emotional. You need to be emotional and passionate about it and alter that. In 90 days, you would have become another person. You would have started another kind of life completely. This thing I'm telling you works. If 90 days is not enough, take it to the next level. 180 days. That's, we are talking about 6 months. You will completely change. Mine took me time, my friend. It wasn't one day. I don't even think it was only 5 months. I don't think it was 5 years. It took time, but I kept at it. I kept at it when I knew that my thought was affecting me. The things, the experiences I've had, they were affecting the way I thought about myself. I started walking. I started believing those things. Sometimes I would stand in front of the mirror and keep speaking to the other man on the other side. And guess who that man was? It was my reflection. He accepted everything, believed everything, never argued with me. It's not like those who don't understand where I was going. He was in total agreement. And that's what you got to do. Experiences that occurred many years ago in our lives can influence and shape how we view and feel about ourselves, especially if they had tapped into the emotions, and that deeply also. And your question then will be, if the experiences happened long ago, why am I seeing myself in a negative light today? That's the question we are answering. If that's your question, that's what we are answering. After all, we might have been having better adult experiences. You find yourself in the midst of people who accept you. See, growth has not changed the internal content. How you look, except there has been a reordering of your thinking. See, this is how it works. If you had some programming into your, say, your laptop or your iPad, and you have not uninstalled them to install the kind of programming you want, that programming stays until you uninstall it. For as long as that system is still working, that device is working, until you change the format, is that format that will serve you. When you want to write, if it is Microsoft, it cannot change into CorelDRAW. If it is CorelDRAW, it cannot change to Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop. Do you get what I'm saying? Or any kind of thing that you're doing, if the format, the scripting has not changed, if the programming has not changed, the output will just be from that program, and that will also inform the result you are going to get. So there may not be anything wrong with you than that you had believed. You have accepted the way people were talking about. Some of them might not have meant it. Some of them might have meant it. But the most important thing is how you have responded or reacted to what they say. If you accept it and internalize it, That's why it's still affecting you today. Because you have not uninstalled the programming. You have allowed that to seep and eat into you. You see, Joseph lived in the house of Potiphar and was supposed to be a slave. But Bible says that he went in to do his business. He never saw himself as a slave. And when it was time for him to speak to Potiphar's wife, he said, I am the one in charge of this house, even though you are not one of the things that was put under my care. So that was a different mentality completely. They thought of him as a slave, but he saw himself as somebody who has business to do. And whatever was put in his hand, because of how he was seeing himself, prospered, because he was a prosperous man. This is powerful stuff. So, you have to know that these things, the thinking that had taken years, taken time, had become internalized. They had come right into your inner person.